and maybe the output can be, maybe we can name as a Sacsfa 2022 declaration. May I invite to Professor Williams, Merrill Williams first? Is that okay?
Thank you very much, Professor Kularatne. I'm not sure that I really wanted to go first, but however, I usually complain that gender is always put last, so now I am trapped and being put first.
I personally done it.
You have caught me out. But let me turn that into my first point. There's often a debate when doing a report or a declaration as to whether gender should be in its own little section or, mainstreamed, meaning inserted piece by piece in other parts of the declaration or the report or the topic. And I come from the idea now, having thought about this question for a while, that it needs to be in both places. We don't need to just confine gender to its own little theme or its own article in the declaration or chapter in the report. We need to think about it in many parts of the report, not necessarily all parts, but in several parts. But we also need to think of gender separately, as well, maybe not separately, but as a cross-cutting issue that has special features that go across many subjects. The gender divisions of labour that we've heard about in quite a few of the presentations that I've attended today, the power imbalances that happen in most societies at all scales, from the political level, the international level, down to the household. Those some of those features of the gender issues need to be brought together and thought about in a more comprehensive way. So when I looked at the draft of the declaration, I could find a couple of places in other topics where I felt that women or gender should be mentioned that is by not explicitly making gender and or women, depending on the context, clear. It is often a way in which women just then get lost as the action takes off. Fisher becomes fisherman in people's minds, for example, and the women who fish, the people who work in other parts of the value chain are not considered. So there are a couple of places in the declaration where I think that we could very explicitly refer to women or gender matters.
Thank you very much. This is great. And let me invite to Nicola France for the next. Because it is always very good to give a chance to keep in the gender balance very much. Yes, Nicola, that is.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this panel. I must apologize because I could not follow the discussions yesterday, but I looked at the summaries and I had an opportunity to join the session that was held just prior to this last session. And I could see that it has been very rich discussion. This is always very interesting to hear about the specific local context also through the videos and hear the voices directly of the people that are deriving their livelihoods from small-scale fisheries. I would like to come back a little bit on the aspect of the rights, no, the necessity to secure rights for small-scale fishers. And when I say fishers, I also include fish workers, the women, all of the value chain actors in relevant decision-making processes. So what we heard in the session before here relate, for example, to the importance of guaranteeing, securing the rights to water, access to water, no? For example, also in the context of inland fisheries. Marine fisheries is often more debated, it's more visible, everything that relates to the oceans, but I think it's also important to make sure we address both inland and marine fisheries. Now, in order to really kind of secure sustainable small-scale fisheries, I want to come back to the points I made in the keynote that relates to the kind of dual strategy for the implementation of the small-scale fisheries guidelines. And this is something that I'm borrowing from John Kurian, the Indian professor that many of you may know, because he summarized the discussion of a workshop that we had in 2014, very powerful in this way, that there's a need to have on one hand the political will, the government, the enabling policy, regulatory, legislatory framework in place that ensures those rights for small-scale fisheries, and that also sets up institutions that allow for true and meaningful participation of small-scale fisheries in decision-making processes, not only in management of the resources, but also all along the value chain. So that's one part that's needed. That is that one part of the governance framework that is needed, that enabling environment in terms of policies, regulation, legislation, and institutions. And secondly, in order to then function as a participatory governance mechanism, obviously, on the other end, what is needed is strong small-scale fish and fish worker organizations, because it is not sufficient to have that enabling framework. In order to really have change on the ground happen, you also need to have those organizations that are ready to identify their own needs and opportunities, to bring them into those processes and to help enact them. And that is something that is fundamental. It is something that takes a lot of time. That is something that needs to be a peer learning from those who have already achieved progress in that regard. So that is something I think that needs to be kept in mind, everything that relates to this participatory, inclusive participation of all stakeholders. And that requires related training and capacity building, in particular for small-scale fishers and fish workers, but also for government, because it's not enough to have things enshrined in a policy. Also at the government level, they need to learn how to work, for example, at the decentralized level in a much more participatory manner. So that's an important point, I think, in relation to participatory governance that needs a lot of attention. The other point I want to emphasize also is that securing those rights obviously then also carries the need to fulfill certain responsibilities. And in the first session that you had on the sustainable use of the resources, I think that's an important point to consider, no? That it's about rights, but the moment you get rights, you also hold important responsibilities. So that is an important point to keep in mind, that also then requires the constant learning, the traditional knowledge to feed into management models, to really have the ability to act as resource stewards all along the value chain in small-scale fisheries. The last point I want to make is a bit different. It's that it's great to see a lot of students and scholars from Sri Lanka, from Southeast Asia, attending and participating actively in this session. And I think this is also fundamental. It's a bit this concept which is used now a lot of decolonizing science. And I think it's very important that more is done here. So again, I want to thank the organizers for this important event, because it is a way to learn from each other and to really build the capacities on the ground and move away from the need to bring us in. So I hope next time in the panel, there will be even more people from the Global South that can can share their views, that we can really move
I asked Dr. Krishnan to brief this idea into the panel, then we can go for.
Thank you, and it's nice to share screen with such elite minds sitting from different areas. Really, I enjoyed some of the sessions which I could attend. I attended the plenaries and then few sessions in across the program. And I have gone through the kind of a draft which has been prepared by Professor Oscar, almost section-wise. The declaration that he has shared, it touches upon almost most of the points which have been discussed during the conference in a short time. There is certainly certain points that we shall strengthen and then improve the presentation. Maybe if not today itself, maybe we shall share and then take a couple of days and then exchange inventory. I just wish to add at least whatever is documented that's there. Already I've seen all of us, it has been shared. I propose there is a mention about capacity building and then training line. Probably that is one area we can strengthen a little, the kind of training that is required for with the special reference to small scale fishery sector is very unique in the sense not the capacity building of the fishers, rather the officials. The major issue here is all the countries, none of the countries we can say they are not supporting the cause of small scale fishers. The challenge is they lack resources, both financial and then the human competencies. And particularly in this region, in the Bay of Bengal region, we have much constrained financial resources. So the demand for the efficiency in the human resource is much higher to give the best with the less resource. So this is where actually we have to emphasize a special program concerted capacity development of the officials who deal with the small scale fishers. That's one that will be generally called not only for Sri Lanka but for the region. And second, our larger issue which FAO and then FAO has again talked about this capturing the hidden harvest. So this is one area a major gulf in this region. So we have to see how we can develop a methodological framework with simple but robust framework to capture the exact economic contribution of the small scale fishers, gender disaggregated, age disaggregated, and then the background, all those details, so that they will get a better policy focus. That's one area that we should emphasize. And the last one, apart from the points that have already been mentioned in the draft, is a major issue I consider all of you will appreciate. We have to develop some schemes to make the small scale fishing sector attractive to the next generation. And compared to the other sector, this is one which depends on the traditional knowledge, community-based skills involvement, and all this thing. So if at all the contribution of small-scale fisheries is reducing, the demand for the protein is not going to reduce, so that will be compensated or filled by industrial or mechanized fishing. So there has to be some programs we may have to at least emphasize to attract people and encourage people to remain in this sector, and then some mechanisms to incentivize retaining the people who are here as well, attracting and retaining. So other things some stock enhancement measures clearly focused on the coastal region, whether due to the conflict between the mechanisms and small scale fishers, the resources are depleting, and then motorized mechanisms are taken away, and then these small scale fishers have a struggle in finding their resources. So some innovative programs for that, and so maybe I'll just share a small text I quickly made. I'll put it in the group. You may see how best it will fit into the overall scheme of the declaration, and then again we shall exchange and then improve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Krishnan, and let me invite Mr. Sebastian Matthew, and he can suggest his ideas.
Thank you, Professor Kulinathne, and thank you, Oscar, for putting together a useful draft. I think from the notes that I have seen of yesterday's discussion and what I heard today, I think it's very rich kind of a discussion, capturing the texture of issues faced by small-scale fisheries actors, both in the marine and the inland side, mainly focusing on South Asia. I think Southeast Asia, perhaps I missed the presentations yesterday. But today, what I heard were mainly focusing on South Asia. And I can see that all gamut of issues came through these presentations, from legal issues to policy failures to actual impacts on community, from various developments, infrastructure, salinity intrusion, aquaculture development, so on and so forth. So I can see that the almost the entire range of issues were kind of discussed here. So in light of I think the discussion and the interest in having a declaration, so my suggestion is that we need to focus maybe at 3 levels. Firstly, we need to talk about what are the common issues and impacts in the region. I can see that many of the issues shared can be visualized in other countries in the region as well. Therefore, there are quite a few common issues and impacts. And then, secondly, we need to look at what kind of principles we would like to adopt. And I noticed that there were several references to a human rights-based approach, tenure rights be recognized, the importance of consultation and participation. So therefore, there are so many elements are there. And then when you come to tenure rights, what about coastal rights, riparian rights? What about inland fisheries, marine fisheries? Then what about different types of institutional arrangements when we talk about institutionalizing the human rights approach, cooperatives, trade unions, associations? And then I think once we have those principles very clearly and coherently enshrined into that declaration, we can perhaps move into the most important part, which is the operational side. How do you use existing tools? For example, how do you use the law of the Sea Convention, the flag state and the coastal state provisions of UNCLOS to look at bilateral issues or issues with neighboring countries? How can you use regional cooperation, for example? There is Dr. Krishnan here from Bay of Bengal program. So can the regional organization help the bilateral issues in relation to resource management of various perceptions about destructive fishing, trans-border fishing, so on and so forth. Therefore, I think these kind of mechanisms are existing. So therefore, and then how do you use the tenure rights guidelines, I think, which Oscar referred to earlier, and then the SSF guidelines, and then port states measures agreement. There are so many instruments are there which we can perhaps combine in a coherent manner. And then in the context of inland fisheries, I think the very important contribution from Pradeep, that we need to look at rights to water, not only rights to fish. So therefore, how do you look at fair and equitable allocation of water when you talk about inland resources and various uses? Right? These are all very important areas. So therefore, the operational side, existing instruments, and then existing institutions, how these can be combined to deal with what we identify as the issues and impacts. Applying the principles can become a major step forward in, again, reiterating what we have achieved in international instruments, and then again, reiterating our commitments at the international, regional, and national levels. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sebastian. Then may I invite Mr. Herman Kumar, because we are running time very fast, and I would like to invite Mr. Herman Kumar to give your views in this panel, and then we can move.
Thank you, Professor Kulratna. After hearing all these eminent personnel, I know it is very little that I can contribute, because most probably after Sebastian's presentation, he's very comprehensive always, and hence I have little to say, but still I have few points to highlight. One thing that we need to consider how we ensure the rights of the communities, basically the customary rights, because we don't want the or the fishers don't want the access. We want the rights for our own resources. So that is basically what we have been fighting for our customary rights. So that should be ensured and it should be included. At the same time, as a second point, I would like to highlight here that after 8 years of adopting VJSSF, the SSF guidelines, how far, as Dr. Kannan very rightly said, and also about the fisher people and the officials, how they see that, so how they have internalized these important points, basically the principles of guidelines. So that is very important, that we need to build up capacities of the fisher people to negotiate with any any official, the government or any other politician or whoever. When they come to a negotiation tables, they should understand, and with that, they should negotiate. And we need to have very strong capacity building process on that, and we are taking some steps. Also, based on that, we need to have our national fisheries policy to develop. So we are talking about human rights-based approach on fisheries in this guideline. So that is very important in Sri Lankan context, because we are having serious issues facing violating our human rights, not only political rights, but also civil and economic rights as well. So we need to consider that very strongly, how we ensure the national fisheries policy drafted and adopted based on the SSF guideline. Third point is about the social security measures. So that is very important, because the fishers are really depriving. The women are also excluded, as we repeatedly saying, and our fishers are the fisher women are also having seriously excluded from this situation, as you maybe some of you have seen at the video that presented. And in that, it is very important that we ensure the social security measures for fishermen and women. And the safety at sea is very important under this climate crisis, because day by day, the issues related to the security of the fisher people in the sea is really a dangerous situation we are facing, and also it should be serious attention to be paid on that. Finally, we are in the era of blue economy. So the coastal resources are being grabbed by corporates and many other ways, either government or multinationals or local investors or whoever. So we are, as fishers, are losing our fishing grounds, fishing rights, livelihoods, coastal environment, not only coastal, but also inland fishing environment as well. So how we see the alternative to the so-called blue economy paradigm. So based on, it should be based on food sovereignty. We should think how we always saying about the decision-making process, how people should be included, and the decision-making should be inclusive. In the context of food sovereignty that we are talking, I know some of our panelists are not really supportive of this one, but still we are focusing and we are just trying to push how we ensure the food sovereignty, which ensure the decision-making process of small-scale fishers, very particularly the women in that, because women are having more struggle. I mean, they are having struggle within the struggle to ensure that their space to be taken care of. So in that, I would like to say we should have very human rights based approach to develop in our national fisheries policy based on VGSSF. So Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Raman Kumar. Then, actually, with the time, I'm really interested to give some opportunity to the audience, because there are some more people. I mean, there are many people who are very experienced on these fisheries, and having some ideas from them. Then I want to come back to the panel, and we can to decide actually how we are going ahead. What should we take up with action? What is the action of this discussion? And before that, may I invite anybody who is in the audience, if they really want to express your ideas into the panel and to join with the discussion, please. Yes, please. Roshan's commenting.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I have already, note taking things from the keynote speeches. But just that, that was inside me had not come out very well in this particular conference, as well as some of the conferences that we have attended and heard. It's all about, what plain meeting in the morning, about language. And even talk about governance and management and but even sometimes we don't sometimes we think they are similar, and governance know what is being done, but you don't understand the term very well. And so that even it's a guideline. Once I remember, and somebody was telling me there was a sentence in which they used the term appropriate. It's appropriate. What is appropriate? Appropriate in terms of what? There are things that what I want to say is that language matters. Okay, for example, co-management, and it is generally used by almost everybody. Co-management, and we know that it is the responsibilities are being shared, the state actors and the communities, and it's the integrated process of management. Then there are so many stakeholders and who join hands to manage the share in the the management responsibility. And so it, there are certain words, but they have been misused by people. Some people say, "Oh, we have co-management." Finally, you see that government, the state actors are sitting with the communities, and state actors run the show, and communities are just listening. They can't participate because they don't understand the language. Uh, so, yeah, I have always been, stressing on the fact that we have to train and build up the capacities of the community actors as well as the state actors. Who understands what co-management is. And so, these are things that we have to think of. How do you operationalize things at the ground level? What do you have to do? Co-management, what is co-management? You say we have to have co-management. The state actors sitting with the people. How do you see that people? Who are the state actors who will be sitting? And how are they are the responsibility? What responsibility? So these are things. So I thought that even the co-management did not emerge in this conference. And it is important for people and the state and all the stakeholders to get together, sit around the table and make decisions. And so this was not I understood inclusivity or bringing people together, everybody together. And if I keep on that list, I highlighted the fact that for management, inclusion of all sectors, inclusiveness, all, women, marginalized groups, everybody, and participate, active participation of all. This is where training and capacity building matters, and the holistic approach to manage. So there are certain things we have missed out. And thought that, I mean, to, that we about co-management or partnership building or sharing resource management responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wants to contribute somehow, because we have some little time, and those who are in the 2 days conference, because Dr. Nilanda, do you like to contribute something, or if anybody else wants to, because I want to go back to the panel as well. Anyone else wants to make any comments to contribute for the preparation of this work, please? Yeah. If not, may I summarize some of the important points that we were picking up from the panelist presentation, and of course, Professor Williams was mentioning that women and gender, and that was highlighted to all the panelists equally. And the new idea of coming with Nicola is decolonizing science, actually. That's a very interesting idea, and the same thing was repeating in the different words by Dr. Krishnan, and saying that we have to get the attraction of the younger generation to the SSF. And also then the empowerment, not only for the fishermen, but we also have to make more attention to the empower of the official, because their contribution seems very, very big in implementation of the SSF, and even the contribution support for the fisheries development. And one interesting point which has Matthew was presenting, that he put all the points what we should do in the next stage, but he was telling us that ensuring inland water rights, because this is a very big issue even in Sri Lanka. Maybe I would like to get some more comments from Mr. Sebastian Matthew about that the intersector and intrasector water allocation is a big issue in inland aquaculture in Sri Lanka. Maybe the situation is much similar to India as well, because irrigation, the primary purpose of our reservoirs are irrigation, but the aquaculture is very lucrative business venture if you can develop it. And can we little bit explore this idea? And also then finally then the Herman Kumar was pointing very, very interesting points, especially for this customary rights and the intervention of official once again, and also that almost all points are very, very important. And I would like to go back to Mr. Sebastian Matthew, and can we little bit discuss about that thing, and also we have to discuss how we are going to prepare this the declaration for Sacsfa 2022, and with a given period of time. Shall we discuss those matters right now? And if you permit me to ask, please.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Professor Kularatne. I think a couple of points I would like to add to what I shared earlier. One is a reference to the International Water Courses Convention, which I think is not ratified by the South Asian countries. I think it's a very important convention when it comes to multiple uses of inland water resources, especially rivers I'm referring to. So I think that has a lot of interesting insights into how to protect various uses of aquatic resources, not only for irrigation or power generation, but for things like keeping minimum water for fishing, aquaculture. So I think there are multiple uses which can be also approached from a human rights-based approach. I mean, if some community which is very poor needs water to fish or to grow fish in the inland sector, I think the rich farmers associations or the irrigation lobby or the power generation department should also make concessions to the needs of the fishing and small-scale aquaculture sectors. So I think that's very important. And so therefore the minimum flow, again, it's a concept which comes through that instrument. Do you talk about water being completely blocked, or do you allow water to flow so that rivers have some resources? So how do you maintain minimum flow through some consultation process, through different users have to sit together? So therefore, within, again, this governance approach model, we can try to put different users of aquatic resources together and try to see how we can arrive at a equitable allocation of water resources between these players. And then I would also like to respond to the question that Oscar raised about co-management. I think, again, this is a very important issue. I think what we have to very crucially bear in mind is the legal structures in each country. I mean, to my understanding, co-management is not possible in India because India only allows for decentralization, not for devolution of power. So when you talk about co-management as a concurrent management, as a evolution of authority to a local community to manage resources in its area, I think that sort of a situation, I don't know if it exists in South Asia or not. We have only shared management arrangement between the state and the user groups. Whether that can be easily called co-management or not, cooperative management, collaborative management, community-based management, decentralized management, I think there are so many shades of it. Therefore, what exactly is the legal framework within which we talk about co-management, and what exactly is the substantive meaning of the term in our national legal context is very important to clarify. I think otherwise it's a term which is used generally but understood differently by different users. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christine. And before I go to Nicola once again, but Mr. Pradeep, do you want to add something for the
Only one
idea very briefly, please.
Only one sentence I want to say regarding this right to water thing. Actually, this there are conflicts between sectors and also inner contradictions, inner sector. So I think that the ecosystem-based human rights approach actually has the key to it. To solve this thing. There are non-point pollution coming from agricultural fields. And it is killing the fish in the rivers, in the water bodies. So that is it. Actually, ecosystem-based human rights approach should be there. And if it is actually adopted, only then the inter-sector and inner sector conflicts can be overcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And very simple clarification from Nicola. Very quickly, maybe we can go for that the decentralization of science. Actually, that is the term I picked you from your presentation and the discussion. And earlier we had about decentralization of industries, but now it is the new word. So can you little bit explain that one and how we are going to put that one into the what do you really means on that to do?
Yeah. Thank you for coming back on that. And I think it's something that relates well to also the comment that Oscar made about that language matters, because the way science is currently conducted or perceived is very much dominated by an approach that is coming more from the Western world, no? Because there has been more access to education, there has been more access to information, but in a way we're now approaching a point where, for example, technology helps to make information accessible much more widely. But I think we're also approaching a point where many are considering that somehow the models that we're referring to that are guiding our thinking so far are not necessarily the only ones or the ones that we should always refer to, that there are different ways to look, for example, at fisheries. To give you an example, I started looking a little bit more at working with indigenous peoples. How you consider the natural resources, how they are influenced by culture, how they are connected to other activities and social interaction in a community. So that can influence how we consider concepts and how we name them. The amount of words, for example, that you have in some local languages for fisheries, for different types of fish, for different seasons, even just for water. I think it's something we can learn from, and it's something we need to value. So empowering the young scientists, the communities that have and hold that traditional knowledge, to bring that up, to bring that way of framing into broader discussions, I think is something that can help to decolonize the way we are currently setting paradigms, the way we are making decisions, and the way we are perceiving what is a pathway that we are aspiring to. And that is important. It was mentioned before, for example, everything that relates to the blue economy, to everything, these blue paradigms that are also emerging, and how can those be revisited to consider those aspects that are more strongly related to equity, that are making stronger linkages between economic, environmental, and social sustainability, taking more integrated and coherent approaches to development. So those are a little bit of thoughts on that. There's lots of literature available on decolonization of science, because it is something that is gaining traction. And I think it's something that we all should look at. So
I think Nikolai is suggesting to try to upload rather than download. That is what you mean by, perhaps. Okay, thank you very much for then I would suggest that maybe you can give some ideas to me. Then we have to work on this declaration, and we have to have a team of the responsible. I mean, if somebody can lead that. No, Professor Miriam Williams wants to make some comments.
Yes, sorry, I muted.
Please.
Yes, I mean, I'd certainly like to take part in taking the declaration further. I want to make one observation of the current declaration, and also some of the comments that I saw in the abstract from the CSO group, that there is a tremendous concern, correctly, in the small-scale fisheries community for the quality of the environment. You've talked quite a bit about inland waters and competing water uses and allocations and rights and quality and so on, and that's incredibly important. In addition, on the coast, there's an incredible problem with the quality of the environment in almost every part of the world, with so many different people wanting to take over the coast, completely reconstruct it for their own uses. This is very big in the blue economy kind of thinking. And, you know, it's a bit like the elephant in the room. There will be no small-scale fisheries on the coast in the foreseeable future if something isn't done to stop the mentality that we can just transform the coastal environment in ways that are more controlled but more dangerous and risky for human use, you know, whether it's with ports or resorts or whatever. So that came through very strongly. The relevance to the declaration is that came through very strongly with the CSO contributions, perhaps less strongly with our more academic contributions. And I think that, you know, the CSO people are representing the lived realities on the ground. So not just in the inland waters, but also on the coast. There are these major issues of what is there going to be there to share in future.
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, Professor Oscar Signal.
No, I just want to say something about now our way forward, what we are going to do next. Now, there's hardly any time for us to, you know, write down something, declaration or anything. What we can do is the panel and even us, whoever you know who also contributes to this, can go through the documents already which are already there, and for example, write down your own thing For example, what Nicole mentioned, Nicole can, put out in black and white, and Sebastian can do the same, Krishnan, and we all can do the same at the same time, react to the other document that we have prepared, what I prepared and what the rapporteurs they have sent us, and they can pick up things and write their own thing, and will circulate among us, and finally finally we can come out with a document, say after 1 month or something like that, and we will appoint chairman of this committee, so that somebody is finally responsible. It does not mean that he has to work more than others, but then he can compile everything and come out with. So I hope he will not be angry if I suggest the name of Sebastian. Sebastian is very good in doing this sort of thing, right? So if we can do that, right, put down our ideas and also write down things from what you gather from others, and then circulate among the group, and then finally Sebastian can compile everything and write down a declaration. We don't need 10-15 pages, right? Few pages. So this is what I suggest, but you can propose other ways of doing it.
Yeah, that's good.
I also endorse this. Like, this is a clear way forward. Yeah.
I also endorse that. Thank you. It's a very good solution.
Okay. Yeah, and that is. Then we have to continue the work, and maybe I'm going to wind up the session by thanking every panel members, and not even that, and everybody who contribute to Sacsfa 2022, and very importantly, I'm very much happy to see in this evening from Sri Lanka and Professor Merrill and Mr. Sebastian from India, and Krishnan, and also Nicola. And you devote your time for us. Actually, it is great support and very collaborative, and we are highly appreciate behalf of Sri Lanka Forum for Small Scale Fisheries and as the organizing committee of Sacsfa 2022, and congratulate. We can see you once again in the next conference perhaps, and therefore I'm going to wind up this session by saying the good evening for everybody.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kule just announced the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Session chairs, panelists, authors, and presenters of research findings, and participants. Let me propose the vote of thanks at the end of the Fishing for Life conference organized by the Sri Lanka Forum for Small Scale Fisheries in collaboration with the Ministry of Fisheries, Bay of Bengal program, and several state universities in Sri Lanka. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank the chief guest of the inaugural session, Honorable Douglas Devanand, Minister of Fisheries of the Government of Sri Lanka, for joining the inaugural session and for the recognition given to Fishing for Life conference. His presence was a great strength to the conference. The organizers are thankful to Dr. P. Krishnan, Director of Bay of Bengal program, for being the guest of honor at the inaugural session and also for serving as a panelist. We would also like to recognize the contribution made by the Bay of Bengal program as a partner of the conference. Our deepest gratitude also goes to the Vice Chancellor of the Sabragama University of Sri Lanka, Professor Uday Ratnayaka, for all assistance extended and for delivering a very timely and interesting speech. I would also like to thank all our keynote speakers, Emeritus Professor Martin Babenk of the University of Amsterdam, Emeritus Professor Sven Jentoft of the Arctic University of Norway, Professor Anthony Charles of St. Mary's University in Canada, Professor Merrill J. Williams of Gender in Fisheries section of the Asian Fisheries Society, Madam Frans Nicolay from the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Professor Premchandra Vattagi of the Sabaragamu University of Sri Lanka, and Emeritus Professor Oscar Amarasinghe of the University of Ruhuna, Sri Lanka. The organizers are grateful to all session chairs, Professor Ruchira Kumaratunga, Professor M.G. Kularatna, Professor C.N. Valpita, Professor Nilantha De Silva, Professor Dilip Bruce, Professor N.Y. Hirumutugada, Dr. Nireka Veeratunga, Professor Oscar Amarasinghe, and all rapporteurs and coordinators, conference officials, and most importantly, the authors and presenters of research findings, without whom the conference would have been meaningless. We are also grateful to members of the final panel, Mr. Sebastian Matthew of the International Collective in Support of Fishwalks, Dr. P. Krishnan of the Bay of Bengal Program, Mr. Herman Kumar of National Fisheries Solidarity, Professor Merrill J. Williams and Madam Frans Nicolay, our keynote speakers, and Professor M.G. Kularatna of the University of Kelaniya, who chaired this panel, which prepared the Sacsfa 2002 Declaration. We would also like to thank all civil society organizations and individuals of the South and Southeast Asian region who made their voices and the voice of the people component of the Fisheries for Life conference. We are grateful to our sponsors, including Bay of Bengal Program, Sampath Bank, Versatile Business Solutions Private Limited, and Analytical Instruments, who supported us for the publication of conference materials, including the book of abstracts and all other conference-related matters. We would like to especially thank Professor Uday Ratnayaka, Vice Chancellor of the Sabaragamu University, Dr. Aruna Kumar, Dean of the Faculty of Agricultural Sciences of the Sabaragamu University, for facilitation of the event. Special appreciation goes to Professor Achini De Silva, Ms. Hansika Tilini, Ms. Sulochana Senivaratna, Ms. Ruini Basnayaka, Mr. Satut Sellaperman, Mr. Anura Gunaratna of the University of Sabaragamu University of Sri Lanka for bearing the responsibility of web launch, creating online platforms, publishing the address book, preparation of videos and media coverage. We would also like to thank all our participants and hope that you have found the conference useful. We invite every one of you to be with us at the next Fishing for Life conference in 2024. Thank you very much.